Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you would like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you'll read my comic books online in a digital archive, get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share artwork, feedback, and more. Just talk about general art shop talk. You can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. There's links in the description of this video. And if you're watching on Twitch, there are links from the homepage of the channel. One of those bonus live streams is happening this Tuesday. It's something we call Art Book Study Group. Twice a month, we get together and we analyze for the best art books around. We've been doing a long-running series on Walt Reed's The Figure. It will be live on Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we also have the voice channel open in the Discord during those live streams. So anyone who hops on can talk straight to me. We can just talk while we're looking through these. So head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy and become a subscriber. If you would like to get a free digital sketchbook, get blog posts delivered right to your inbox showing work in progress animated GIFs, posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively. You can become a newsletter subscriber. You can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. There will be one coming out on Monday. I send it out at the first of every month. So head on over to newsletter.jeremy.net, sign up there. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comics or free digitally on Comixology or Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. There you can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can pick up my most recent project, Morning Star. It tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains the conclusion to the series, issues 5 through 8. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character designs, sketches, page layouts, thumbnails, photo reference. Basically, I'll show you how I put the whole book together. You get all those at amazon.jeremy.net. And again, links for all of those in the description of the video. And the books, there's book flip-throughs also available on the homepage of the YouTube channel. All right. Let's see. Negro Frazetta is in the chat. How you doing, man? What's up? Yeah, I feel like I'm mostly recovered. I'm going to be back to in-person work. I had a bout of COVID, but I am mostly over it. Had some good medication that took care of a lot of the symptoms early because I had a high fever and really bad cough. And so far, so good. Knock on wood, no rebound. And seems like I'm making my way back to the world of the living. So today we're doing something a little bit different because I guess until I'm ready to start working publicly on the new comic, I've just been finding little things to keep myself busy with, either standalone art pieces or master studies. In this case, this isn't a master study per se. What it is I think I have mentioned in the past that I'm signed up for Schoolism, and they have a ton of great courses there. I'm not an affiliate for Schoolism, but I've been subscribed to Bobby Chu's YouTube channel for a long time. I think that he shares a lot of great content, a lot of great interviews, and pardon me. Excuse me. Point being is that I've been meaning to check out Schoolism for a long time. So they've got a lot of great instructors over there, a lot of artists who I admire. So I decided to sign up. And I've been taking Nico Lockerstern's Intro to Procreate class because even though I've been using Procreate for a few years now, I think the same way that I'm always trying to go back and study the fundamentals, I also feel like it's good to go back and look at a program that I think I know and kick the tires, see what I can learn, what do I think I know that I don't really know. The known unknown, or the unknown unknowns. Anyway, one of the assignments he has in his class is on drawing environments. He's got one on internal environments, one on external environments. And I finished the internal demo where I basically, it's not really part of the thing. You don't have to copy what he does. What I usually do is I'll watch his demo, try to copy what he's doing in his demo, And then afterwards, he says, go do your own version of this. So with the interiors, I copied an interior hallway that he had. And then I thought, for my own, I was going to just start drawing one out of my head. But I realized what really makes, I think what makes his process work is that he has a really good understanding of light and how it interacts with environments. So I thought to myself, if I want to do this, what I should probably do is actually just take on, find a photo that has some good lighting and make it less about coming up with an environment out of my imagination and make it more about studying the lighting in that room and trying to draw a copy of those lighting effects. So the way that the light is kind of spilling through the curtains, and I have it a bit more blown out in here than it is in the photo reference that I'm looking at. But let me scoot this over a little bit. It's kind of hard with all of these having the layer panel in, but all these things are tricks that I learned in the class, like the curtains. They have a little pattern in there that, let me zoom in. The curtains have a pattern on there that I basically made a flat pattern and then distorted it so that it looked like it was laying flat against the curtains. Then I erased part of here's the version that was laying parallel to the curtains. And then I flipped that and I erased through both of them and then flipped them so that you kind of got it. So you get that sense of the patterns of the curtain going in and out, in and out. I mean, the only real major effects here are that curtain, the texture that's on the floor, which means there's a layer here called rug. Where is that? That texture that's on the floor. This was another one of those same things where I just, made a pattern and then just dropped it in. Pretty similar to what you would do with Photoshop. And then the lighting above, I think that, that layer is on screen, so it gives it a more blown out level. But that screen layer, I think, is really good for just doing the lights that are in the room. The rest of it is all just me drawing planes of shadow and planes that are facing towards the light. And that's basically what I've been doing, is just working my way through this scene. And when I'm done, I'm going to try and put a layer over it and just add some color, but it's going to be real simple. I'm not going to go crazy with this. It's not like I'm trying to make a perfectly photorealistic rendering. Like even with this, you can look and there's differences. I didn't duplicate the photo exactly. Like the table that's in the foreground is farther away from the chair than it is in the photo. I actually moved the chair a little bit farther to the right, the chair that's in the distance. There's little places here and there where I kind of tweaked the dimensions to just fit what I wanted to. And in fact, you don't even see the back leg of the chair that's closest to the viewer in the actual photo. So these are all just little tweaks and changes I made to make it fit what I'm studying here. And I will tell you that I am a little bit debating the fact that on this layer where I'm drawing the highlights, my instinct tells me don't draw the highlights and the shadows on the same layer. Even though I did do that with some of it, I'm going to create a second clipping mask layer. And for the chair in the back, I'm going to do it on a different layer. I'm going to paint the rest of the shadows on that chair in a different layer, just to be on the safe side. I feel like having your shadows and your lights on separate layers, supposed to paint them on the same layer, it's got its positives and negatives. The only real negative is that if you decide that you need to adjust something, you don't like it, and if you've got like a broad airbrushed area, you may have to completely repaint that again, which, that's not the worst thing in the world, but it can be a pain in the ass, and I like to avoid things that are a pain in the ass. Call me spoiled. So I'm painting into a clipping mask layer. So if I were to draw this line, it'll stop right there, meaning it's only going to paint. I mean, if you guys know Photoshop, it's the same as a normal clipping mask layer. It's only going to paint on the objects. It's only going to paint on the objects that are on the layer that it's clipped to. So that's really just the chairs, part of the fireplace, and some of the objects that are on the bookshelf in the back. That's really all it is. Let's see here. Amar's in the chat, and James. Hey, how you doing, guys? Thanks for popping in. Happy Sunday, y'all. Yeah, so I'm just coming in here and doing some studies, and I honestly feel like the best thing possible for growing one's skills at drawing environments, and this is spoken from somebody who, admittedly, I haven't been doing this. I'm certainly not an expert in it, but that's why I'm taking a class. But I really feel like the best thing is just straight up observational drawing. Realistically, I should be doing these, these kind of studies. I should be doing these studies from real life, but it's not like I have time to go to every single interesting room, like doing room studies on a daily basis. So this is one of those where, working from photos is a good substitute for drawing from models. But I really do find that just sitting and doing these studies from the actual from photos and just looking at how light affects these objects, that seems to be the most helpful thing. Let's see here. AMR says, my preferred way to paint in Clip Studio is with clipping masks. He says, I finally started to do the same with Glenn Keane. Milk Call will be next. Those are some greats to study from. Milk Call has like amazing gestures. I have a whole book of Disney layouts. It's part of the Disney. I think they call it like the Disney Archive Library. It's a bunch of books on different phases of Disney animation. And it just has stuff that's in their archive from all of the films that they've made. So it's just got layouts from like so many live action films, like going back to Pinocchio and Snow White, all the way up through I think Tarzan. But it's just their background layout drawings. And I bought it basically to do something similar to what I'm doing here, just studying composed environments made by people who are far better at it than I am, because that I think is one of the best things you can do. So I put on the assisted drawing layer because I want to try and make the seat cushion on this feel like it's about the same height as the seat cushion of the chair that's closest. I never really used assisted drawing very much in Procreate, but that's because I never really did many environment drawings. And now that I am doing them, I find the assisted drawing to be invaluable. And Amar says, once I'm done with the animations, I'll share them with you on Discord. I look forward to checking that out. Amar has some amazing work, and he's also one of our Patreon subscribers. So I get to see a lot of his stuff on Discord, which is super awesome. He also has his own Discord server for his work. If you guys have not checked out Amar's work, you should do a search for him. Art with Amar B on YouTube. Another great fellow artist who shares a lot of his creative process online. And it's funny, I was texting with a buddy of mine about these classes that I've been taking, the schoolism classes. And I looked at the final piece from Nico Lockerstern's demo, and it was amazing. But the funny thing is, I could see why his is amazing and mine wasn't. And it just comes down to the fact that he's willing to put in work that I wasn't. Because I looked at all of the, whoops, that is too large. Let me bring this brush size down. I'm just trying to erase a little bit of this line here. It's kind of throwing off the perspective. But there were so many little details that that Lockerstern was putting in to his demo piece. And I could see myself when I'm drawing saying, all right, I see what he's doing. And it really comes down to attention to detail in terms of, you know, light, number one, proportion, number two, but then just like fine details you would actually find in a real room. Like he was doing an environment that had like cables and light sockets, all sorts of stuff around the room. And I thought to myself, I could draw all that shit, but why? You get the point of the room once you get like the four walls and the light coming in. That's why my study, I'm really just focusing on the lighting, because I thought all the little details to make this feel photorealistic, or really not even photorealistic, but to make it feel like a piece of concept art, because that's, I think, what a lot of his work really has going for it, is that it feels, he's a concept artist, so his work looks like what it's supposed to be. It looks like concept art. And I think that whilst a lot of concept art that we see as people that study it is rough and loose, I think that there's a lot of stuff, like when you're doing like key shots, a lot of that stuff, you know, has very subtle lighting and all of these little details in there that give you a sense of it being an actual environment, you know, without being slavishly photorealistic. And I thought, as I was watching, looking at his final piece, I was like, yeah, I see what he's doing, and I just don't want to draw all of that. I think part of it is that my natural tendency is to be drawn towards looser art styles, but part of it might just be pure laziness. And that's not to say if I weren't lazy, that's not to say that I can do what he does. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is what separates, I think, a lot of people from professional level concept art is just that attention to detail. And I might not be able to do work as good as his, but I could do work better than what I have done in the past if I just took a little bit more time to pay attention to those details. But a lot of those details bore the hell out of me. Which means, shit, I may not be well suited to be a concept artist. Yeah, Amar mentioned that he's making some homemade vegetarian pizzas, and spinach went bad. Yeah, that you got to use that spinach up quick. I know with me, I got like 1 week. Whenever we go grocery shopping, there's certain vegetables that we know that if we don't use them by the end of the week, we have to toss them out, and it always pains me because, you know, my mama raised me not to waste food. So, but if anything, I think that encourages us, my wife and I, to both eat vegetables on the regular, so that we use up that stuff instead of letting it go to waste. So I have been avoiding using the smudge tool only because I don't want to say it's a cheat, because whatever gets you the effect that you need is the tool that you need. It's not a cheat. But I feel like I am learning how to paint better without using it. Like I'm learning how to put down the strokes that I want by avoiding it. And then when I do use the smudge tool, I want it to be intentional. I want it to be, I'm doing this not to hide flaws, but to get a specific effect. Yeah, Amar says, I understand I'm lazy too much. I know that one of the things that keeps me back. He's saying, I just don't want to spend more time where it's needed on one piece or most things art related. Yeah, if anything, I know a lot of artists fear overworking a piece, and I am the exact opposite. I need to push a piece to completion. I think that frequently I get a lot of pieces about 80% of the way to the finish line and then be like, all right, I guess we're good. And that's actually one of the reasons why I specifically signed up for schoolism, is because schoolism is not so much, they really don't seem to be too concerned about draftsmanship per se. Like there aren't figure drawing classes on there. It seems like their greater goal is about art, concept art in specific, but it's more about the art making and the decision making, and how it's more about, once you know how to draw, what are you going to do? Are you going to draw environments? Are you going to draw animals? Do you want to make 3D models in Blender? Do you need to get better at color theory? It's more about what do you do with your artistic skills once you have them. And I feel like a lot of that leans in towards making finished works. Now I'll tell you, I just went through and I kind of smoothed out the back of that chair, and now I really don't like it, because I actually like the fact that I see the horizontal brush strokes in the chair in the foreground. I don't know how well you guys can see that on the screen, but comparing the two chairs, I've got this one that's just smoothed out versus the other that has the brush strokes, and I really prefer the horizontal brush strokes. So I think I'm going to come in here and erase. Actually, you know what? I was going to say I needed to go in and erase all of that and redraw it, but what I can really do is come in here and paint brush strokes with the eraser, and it'll give me kind of the same effect, since the eraser is using the same brush that I used to draw these tones in originally. So I can just come in here with a small brush and just reverse engineer that. It's not perfect, but I think it feels a little bit more, a little closer to what I originally intended. Now I'm going back to my shadow layer. Now see, here's the thing. I had mentioned at the top of the stream that the only real downside to working your lights and darks on a single layer was if you want to go in and do revisions. But the downside to having them on separate layers is that you do kind of have to switch back and forth and be aware of which layer you're working on. I guess when you're working with lights and darks on a single layer to adjust your values, it feels a bit more like you're actually working in a sketchbook or on traditional media, because you're just focusing on just moving, pushing volumes. Let's see here. Jacques is in the chat. Bonjour. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. Johnny's in the chat. How you doing, man? Thanks for popping in. Let's see here. Johnny said, I tried sending you a message via your website, but I don't think it worked. Well, you know what? You can, I will message you on if you still have your Instagram account, I'll message you on Instagram. And as a matter of fact, let me see. Got my phone right here. Blah, blah, blah. Switching to messages. Yeah, I just shot you a little a message on IG Messenger, Johnny, just to let you know that I'm still on there. And the questions you wanted to ask me about prints, feel free to ask there, and we can chat over there. Let me see. You know, I see a little nook hanging out over here. This little curve in the side of this table is part of the pattern on the curtains. I just need to go in there and erase it. There we go. All right. I'm spending really more time than I should be just on this chair because it's not even the main chair in the scene. Oh, no wonder it's not doing anything. I'm on the wrong layer. Okay, here we go. Point being is that this chair is not particularly important. And it just looks weird that these two don't quite line up. All right. And you know, Johnny, I know you mentioned the reason why you deactivated your Instagram account. You can just reactivate it but make it private. And that way, people can't message you, or leave comments, or anybody that you don't want to deal with. You can just make your IG account private. That way, you can still use Instagram when you want to, look at things you want to, follow who you want to. Not that I'm saying you should be on there if you don't want to be on there. If you don't want to be on there, don't use that stuff. And you can also always message me on Facebook. I don't know if we're connected on Facebook, but I'm pretty much on all the socials. So I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook. Hell, I think the links to all the social media accounts I'm on are on the homepage of both Twitch and YouTube. And pretty much every social media platform has some form of messaging now. So because if you really want to stay off of Instagram, I don't want to be the reason that you get dragged back in. I don't want to facilitate that. So. It kind of bothers me that now these two chairs don't feel like they match. Let's see here. Let's see here. Yeah, Johnny says I did put on private. People still slide in the DMs. So I'm not on I'm not on Facebook too much drama there. You know what's funny is I always say that I use social media. I do what they tell you not to do, which is I am a seagull social media user, which means I fly in, I drop my shit, and I fly out. That's how I use social media. I don't read stuff. I don't hang out. I may comment. I may give some likes to some friends' posts if I happen to see them for like the 2 minutes I'm on there. But I really, the only thing I do is I interact with people that message me. That's pretty, and leave comments. Other than that, I don't really. They say it's not good to use social media as a broadcast format. It's there so that you communicate with people, connect with people. But I mean, the communication connection is what we're doing now. We're sitting here, we're live streaming, we're talking, we're chatting. That's more how for me. That's probably this is the place where I interact with people the most is you guys, and it's not easy to do that on other platforms. But that's kind of just how I treat all of it. Let's see here. Amar says, I know people don't use the bomb as expression anymore. So these pizzas right here are the bomb. You know what? People still use the bomb. And even if they don't, you're bringing the bomb back. That's all good. I'm glad you're having a nice healthy meal. Let's see here. Johnny says, I forgot all about Twitch. Well, I think it really depends on whether you're a gamer or not, because for me, that's really how I've always viewed Twitch and that's what it was. It's a gaming platform first and foremost. And I've just seen artists on there using it. And I've had enough people tell me, hey, you should really get on there, that I've decided to start trying multi-platform streaming just to share my work on Twitch as well. But it's a little bit harder to build up the library the way I have it here on YouTube. But also it's because of the fact that Twitch seems like it is definitely geared more towards you're on there every couple of days or you're streaming daily. And I don't think that it's easy. I don't think it's easy to build up an audience if you're only streaming once a week like I do. So it's more like I hopped on there, I'm trying it out, I enjoy it, and I've gotten some nice feedback, some nice comments from viewers on there. It's not necessarily the same level of interaction that I have here on YouTube or on Facebook. Oh, see, shows what I know. Johnny says I'm a huge gamer, just not a fan of streaming. It's like, yeah, you know what? I'm kind of the same way. I don't necessarily enjoy watching other people play. It's more like I would want to play. So, Amar says my block and ignore game is strong. You got to be these days, because it's like, why engage in a dumpster fire? It depends on whether you're somebody who really likes to fight with people, because some people love to go head to head with folks, and in those cases, it's like social media is perfect for you. I'd rather just spend my time drawing. Let's see here. Amar says, I believe another key issue is we put limiters on ourselves, but in order to get One Punch Man level skill, we need to break them by bearing through the pain. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how I look at these courses I'm taking. Is I don't ever want to come at art like, oh, I think as soon as you think you know everything, you're screwed. And it's like I tell you guys all the time that I view myself as a lifelong student, but really the main thing I've been studying from the number of years that I've been on here is mostly just figure drawing. And I don't think I've really pushed into learning other aspects of art. I don't think I've pushed composition beyond just what I'm doing in my comics. So I thought, maybe it is time for me to start pushing these other skills. And that's what led me to sign up for Schoolism. And I'll tell you honestly, they have so much content on there that I am not going to be able to get through. I'm probably going to be able to get through a handful of classes before the way they sign up is that you can pay monthly, but they set it up so it's kind of like a yearly subscription, and it's kind of like Netflix. You pay for the year, and then you can take as many classes as you want. But the hard part is having the time to go through and do all the classes. Whereas honestly, when I take figure drawing classes on Zoom with Carl Ganas, it's like it is every week. It's scheduled. I know I got to show up. I'm gonna at least do that. And the other thing is that I'm only taking this semester off from that. As soon as the fall semester begins, I'm going to be back to the Zoom figure drawing classes as well. So that's going to cut into whatever Schoolism time I had blocked out. So we'll see. Time is the thing that we're always short on. Let's see here. Johnny says I'm pretty introverted and private. I get that. I think a lot of us are as artists. I think that's one of the weird things. It's like it's weird that I'm online drawing and talking to people that I don't know in person, and sometimes meeting strangers. But this feels like an extension. I mentioned this to my wife. That figure drawing class kind of feels like church to me, in that I'm in this room full of people and we're all gathered for a collective purpose. And it feels like I'm amongst my tribe. And I guess in a way, even though we don't necessarily know the ins and outs of each other's daily lives and our struggles and all the things that we're going through, it feels like we're here in a like-minded space. We're trying to improve our craft, and maybe it's because we want to do animation, maybe we want to do comics or storyboarding, or we're just interested in figure drawing, but we're all kind of here as creatives, trying to push that Sisyphean rock up the hill. Always pushing that boulder. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says, I stream more on Twitch, and you can easily port over to YouTube via one button click. Yeah, I'm mostly doing using StreamYard to do it. So I know if you've got OBS, you can set it up so you can stream multi-channel. But I found StreamYard their interface is so intuitive that I really like using that for. Oops, that is not what I want. I mostly prefer just doing that as opposed to, it's not like I think that OBS is that hard to figure out, but everything that I don't have to spend time figuring out is one more thing that I can then say, all right, I'm going to set this aside and spend more time making art, which is the thing I really want to focus on. All right. That's too much there. Just going to add a little bit of shadow. Behind the fireplace now. We'll run this side. And I do feel bad that this is not huge and filling up the whole screen that you can see it. But I also feel like in order to get a proper sense of the values I'm trying to establish, I need to be zoomed a little bit farther out. But I don't want to get too dark with this because I also am trying to balance. If I put too much contrast in a particular area, contrast draws the eye. And if I make an area that's not particularly important, if I add too much contrast, what's going to happen is the eye is going to jump all over the scene. So I want just a hint of contrast to kind of give a little bit more depth. But I really feel like the chair that's in the foreground is probably the area where I want the most contrast, and everything else is going to be just sort of just a little bit toned down. Let's see here. Amar says, teaching, doing performance arts, speaking, public speaking classes and events brought me out of the typical inverted shell. You know, that's very true. I know for me, what kind of brought me out of being really inverted was probably being an athlete in college, running track and field, because when you're in a stadium in front of hundreds of people, and they're all some cheering you on, some cheering on people against you, and you're just kind of out there. You just learn to not be shy. I think that comes with, I think, being any type of athlete. It's just sometimes you're just out there, and you got to represent, come correct. All right. Let's see here. You know, as I'm doing this piece, I'm thinking more and more about what I was saying earlier about doing lights and darks on the same tone versus different tones, and I mean different layers. And I am just thinking to myself that I almost prefer the different layers as opposed to doing it. I mean, having everything on one layer as opposed to the different. And I think I need to do a bunch of pieces where I do it with just the light and tones on a single layer until I get to the point where at some point I'm going to do it and be like, oh wow, I really screwed myself. I need to keep these things on separate layers. But I think until that happens, I'm going to mentally keep wanting to have everything on different layer on the same layer. So like I need to push it, I think, until I reach that point where I'm like, oh no, these need to be separate. And then hope that when I come to that point where I feel like I've screwed a piece up, that it's not something that's on a deadline. So even though this other table, this leather kind of this leather coffee table looking thing is in the foreground. And normally I like to have my biggest area of contrast in the foreground and then have things get slightly less intense as you go farther back. Like I mentioned, if I'm thinking of my area of focus as the chair that's on the left, I kind of want to keep the contrast on this table to a minimum. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says slobs or Streamlab OBS is pretty easy to set up and use. It's good to know. Well, I mean, I've already got Streamlab running, and I'm pretty happy with it. So just regular Streamlab. What's funny is drawing these little feet for the table. What it reminds me of is drawing ears. In that, if you don't add any detail, it feels flat and unrealistic. If you add too much detail, it draws attention to itself in a way that it should not. So I'm trying to walk that balance. When I'm done with all of these values, I'm going to throw a texture layer on here. Just to try and vary up these brush strokes. This is one of the things that I think schoolism will help with, because I know that for a lot of experienced concept artists, they say that one of the problems that they see in artists that are not particularly experienced in doing concept art is that they will leave too many of their brushstrokes in an image, and those brushstrokes don't feel like they're complementing the piece. And that is something that I need to work at. Trying to put in brushstrokes that particularly feel like they're directional and they are helping to convey what is supposedly going on here. And what I'm doing right here, this is zooming in, these are details that are small enough that I want to be able to see what's going on. But normally I would not want to be zoomed in this close, because it's going to invariably lead to me adding detail that I don't need. And by the way, I turned off the when I first blocked this in, I had been drawing most of this with the drawing guide on. So there's a whole perspective grid on here, and I realized that's a big difference between me drawing all this freehand versus me setting up a perspective grid and then using the assisted drawing where it snaps the lines, because the sketch layer is turned off, but there's a sketch. Yeah, I realized I went into all this without showing you any of this stuff. Let me turn this on and turn the opacity up. So the way I started this whole thing, let me just fill this with gray so you can see. Damn it. So the way I started this entire thing was simply, I looked at the photo for reference to the left. And then I set up my perspective grid. And then the assisted drawing, what it does is it makes your lines snap to one of the three axes, your X, your Y, or your Z. And based on that, I sketched in this very simple diagram. So this is what I've been working off of, was just this diagram. And then based on this diagram, I blocked in the floor plane and the ceiling plane, the walls, a separate wall for the wall that's in the fireplace that's coming forward, and then planes for the chairs, and then the fireplace, and then the table, and the table that's also sitting in between the two chairs, and then a separate plane for a separate layer for the windows. I've just blocked those in simple flat color. And then I switched to the clipping masks and started doing all the rendering. So that is how I did all this. Because this fundamental sketch that's here with the assisted layer, with the assisted drawing, that to me is kind of like the backbone. You need that before you can do all of the stuff that I'm doing now. And the rest of this is just me doing a study in lighting. That is what the rest of this whole piece is. So let's see. And I notice we are at 51 minutes here. Not quite at the top of the hour, but if anyone has any questions, now's a good time to ask as we're heading into the home stretch of this particular stream. And I think at this point, I'm actually looking more towards just chunky brushstrokes and kind of implying detail versus trying to really render stuff. A little bit of detail in the flower pot in here. Not so much detail, but just impressions of form. Impressions of one side facing towards light and another side facing away from light. I mean, I will tell you that I have never been somebody who really painted botanicals, plants, and still lives. But I will tell you that it's definitely hard to give that sense of light and depth to anything. Add a little bit of shadow to the base of these books sitting on the table. All right, anything more than that, I think will start to distract from the room. The last thing I really need here, there's two things. One is that shadow on top of the floor. I need to come in and refine that a tiny bit, because it feels like the shadow is not really pointing at the chair leg. I think I can turn this this grid back off. The nice thing is whether I can see the grid or not, I can still use that adjusted drawing layer to get stuff to snap to the perspective grid that's set up. I can turn this sketch back on and I can come in here and paint in the underside of those bookshelves. And I guess I'll just throw some grain on real quick and a little bit of color overlay. We'll see how that looks. Let's see the walls. Here's the walls. Clipping mask to the walls. Oh, now would be a good time to turn the drawing assist on. So with the drawing assist on, again, I can draw this line and it'll keep it straight. And if I draw down, it'll keep it straight that way. If I want to draw out this way, it'll keep it straight that way. You know, I can't just draw scribbly lines in any direction. So super helpful for drawing environments. Or mecha, maybe. The nice thing is I can just get in here and get a little corner. A little bit of tone on the wall behind. Really, I'm just sort of framing the shelf. I'm drawing the underside of it and the space above it. There's a dark object on the wall that I can't particularly see. This is the nice thing with layers, is I don't have to be that particularly careful about painting these regions. And now that I look at this, I realize I really shouldn't be putting that much tone or hardly any tone behind the shelves, except for maybe the bottom one. If I look at this photo, the dark region is the underside and the left side. So the side that's facing, the side that's on the same plane as the window, or on the same axis as the window, which makes sense. Let's see here. And Amar is asking, when did I start this piece? I started it last night, and I think I probably took me about 2 maybe 3 hours, 2 or 3 hours to get to the place where I was at the beginning of this live stream, because I had watched a demo. I was finishing the piece that I did in for the class, the demo that the instructor did. I've got a whole folder just for the assignments that I've been doing from the schoolism class. So this is a copy of the piece that Nico Lockerstern did. So my perspective is off based on what Lockerstern did. My colors don't match his perfectly. But it was him basically running through the process of how to set up one of these pieces and paint it. And I mean, most of the work is in that he chose a really good composition, or he created a really good composition, and then he just showed, this is my process for lighting and adding detail and all that. But at the end of it, he says, all right, now go do your own. And so I said, all right, if I really want to learn how to do this, I should draw my own. And I started to sketch one from imagination. But I thought, okay, as soon as I started doing that, I realized what I said at the top of this live stream. It's understanding how light is falling over objects and forms that really, I think, is the strong suit of the technique. That's where the real knowledge, I think, comes in. Because all I'm really doing is, this is the same as me lighting blocks and cylinders and toruses and just doing rendering studies of primitive forms. This is the exact same thing. So if I'm drawing a composition from my imagination without the lighting reference, it's just going to be like, nah. It's like, okay, you can tell that I maybe put the shadows on the correct side, but it's not really going to pop the way that Lockerstern's pop. His pops because he can apply naturalistic lighting to imaginative scenarios and to imaginative compositions. So I thought I will learn more by lighting based on a photo than I will by trying to create a composition out of my imagination. And once I've done this multiple times, and this is one of those things that I could just do while the TV's on and I'm just sitting on the couch with my wife, is just do lighting studies from photos. And once I understand light better than I understand it now, then I'm like, okay, now I'm going to start making up environments out of my imagination. Because I know it seems like I'm constantly going on about, the figure drawing and all the stuff, the classes I'm taking and all this and that. But we all say that we want to get better as artists. But how often are we putting in the work to get better? And that goes for all of us. And I can tell you for me that I have not been putting in the work, not to the level that I should be. Not to the point where, for as many years as I've been drawing, I'm not as good as I should be for this many years. And that's not a mark of shame. It's not me scolding myself. It's just what I feel is an accurate assessment of my skills at this point. And under those circumstances, I said, all right, well, what can I do? What is the work that I can do to get better? And taking classes is a big part of that. And I don't ever want to come to art with the feeling of, oh, well, I've been drawing for so many years that I don't need classes. Anytime that I can learn more and challenge myself and grow as a creative is an opportunity that I should jump at. That's the attitude that I went into these classes with, is let me just learn from people who are better. And I can tell you right now, these shadows, the shelf, the way that I'm coming in here and blocking them in a little bit darker, I'm going to come back and knock down the opacity on these. I'm going to make them darker because the thing I mentioned before about not wanting to draw attention, actually, this isn't too dark. I realize now looking at this, my main concern was that if I made these shells really dark, that they would distract, they would draw the eye in. And, I mentioned that that's what I'm trying to avoid, is I want them to feel fleshed out as in part of the environment, but I don't want to make them stand out, if that makes any sense. So my whole thing is, can I give these a sense of structure without making them distract or draw too much attention to themselves? Because if these are like super highly rendered shelves, you're going to be looking at them like, wow, these are some great shelves. What's so special about them? Detail has to be modulated. That's probably one of the most important rules of composition, is modulating your detail. Put detail where you want your viewer to look, and leave detail out of places you don't want them to look. And when you leave detail out, it doesn't mean that you have to make it black. It can be an area of color, but it can just be like a bright field of like yellow or orange or something. You do the same thing with light as you do with shadows. If it's something that's not particularly important, like the windows are important in that they are the light source for the room, but they're not important in the sense, in any other sense, to be honest. That the only sense that they're important is that they're the light source. But yeah, they're not particularly detailed, and they're not detailed in the photo either. Let me zoom back out. You can see that they look like just panes of white because it's a very sunny day out there. Let's see here. Amar says you made pretty good progress on it. He said you did a lot in a little time frame. Choose your battles wisely. Yes, all true, all true. Thank you for the kind words. I will tell you that the big part of me making the progress I did is that I probably spent a week going through the video, the step-by-step video. And part of it said I only had a little bit of time each night. But the video of the previous one I showed you, the actual demo that the instructor did, he literally walked you through every step. And so the best way I felt to take advantage of that once I was done watching his videos was immediately, while it's fresh in my mind, take what he showed me and copy it. Just come do my own version of what he taught and see how well I can pull that off. Also, it's interesting seeing how light works in that I'm looking at this layer. Now, when you look at the wall, the corner here, so the corner where inside of the bookcase is probably the farthest away, or it's the most hidden from the windows because it's basically has its back to the windows and it's at the farthest part of the room facing away. It's tucked away in a corner. But as you go farther down in here and you get down to this corner where the little bookshelf is, it goes from, slightly lighter from the bookcase is the wall just between the wall and the curtains. But when you get down to the corner, it now goes from the surface that is facing the same direction as the windows, goes from being darker to being, now it's lighter than the side that's turned towards it. When you get to this bottom bookcase, which is now being hidden by, I guess, the light's being blocked by the chair as well, it goes from being slightly lighter to slightly darker. These are the kind of details that make the difference between a piece being reading as photorealistic without really being a photo. And that's what I'm trying to, the whole point of me doing these studies is to train myself to observe those kinds of details. So I'm going to come back and paint that in a second. I just want to draw in these little handles on the door here. But now if I come in here and make this brush broader, and now I have kind of a diagonal light cutting across. Oh wait, I can't do that because I have my whatchamacallit. The drawing assist is turned on. So I might as well finish a little bit of detail going this way before I turn off that drawing assist. Let's see here. And we just zoop past the top of the hour. This needs to be smoothed out a little bit. Oop, that's too big. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and add this detail, but I just noticed for the first time that the panel of these cupboards is not completely flat. It's got a diamond pattern in it, so you get extra bit of light, a little bit of detail by having one panel that facing towards the light and then one panel slightly away. Interesting. But I think adding that in there is going to do that thing that I was talking about in terms of I don't want to draw attention away. But what I do want to do is turn off the drawing assisted layer. And I just want to have like a diagonal line coming from the corner of this door in the bookcase across like that. And now trying to get that sense of that's too dark. Just that sense of light. Breaking across the bookcase. I'm going to come in here with an eraser and actually smooth that out a little bit instead of using the smudge tool. Just take out a little bit. Let's see here. Byron says, I'm late, but I'm here. King's Little Fitness says the same. Thanks for rolling in, brother. Good to see you. And King's Little Fit says, you drew all that? That's cool. You know what? Thank you. I appreciate that. I've already repeated this earlier in the stream, but I don't want to take too much credit for it because one, I'm working from reference, and this should tell you the first thing about this is how important and how powerful reference is. Is having reference is what allows reference is what allowed me to do this. And then two, this is based on a separate image that I was doing that from that schoolism course I've been taking. The instructor did a demo of drawing an interior environment and then said, all right, now that you've done this, go do your own. And so I found a photo to refer from mine and I set up a perspective grid. But now I'm treating it more as a study of light on a room and the objects within that room. Like, I don't do it very often. I should do it more. But I have a whole set of like children's wooden blocks. And I keep telling myself the reason why I bought these is to just set up like a table with just a bunch of objects and one or two light sources, like maybe a primary light source and then a fill light, and then just study how these objects take light. All right. I feel like I could go on and on in here forever if I don't bring this in for a landing. So I'm going to try and do here is let me turn my sketch layer off. Draw a little bit more light in this corner, or shadow in this corner. Let me turn my drawing assist back on. This brush nice and small. I'm just sort of imitating the moldings that are running along the ceiling here. And I want to see I've got a layer. Okay. You know what? I am going to. I've been flip-flopping on keeping my lights and darks on separate clipping mask layers. I'm going to break that rule and hope that it doesn't bite me in the ass. I'm going to come over here from this side. So this bookcase that's back here is kind of half in light, half in shadow. So I'm going to try and come in from the light side on the right. But that doesn't look right. Try that again. Let me go broad, and I'm just going to try and see if I can lightly sweep in just a little bit of light. Like that. Hopefully that should be enough. Now there's a whole bunch of stuff in here that I have not really painted any details into. The books there. Let's see, where's the layer that has those little books on the bookshelf? I think this is the layer with the chairs. So I can come in here real quick and paint a little bit of shadow on top of there. Let's see here. Kingslow Fitness says, perspective like shadow. It says, eventually I may use the drawing assist in perspective. So I know it's like using a ruler, but still practicing clean lines via straights and curves. Yeah, for this is one of those things where the I feel like environments, whether it's interiors or exteriors, that's the place where the perspective tool really shines. I do prefer, like, I mean, if you're doing industrial design, like if you're drawing a car or a vehicle, a spaceship or something, then that's another place when you're doing mechanical things where it's useful. But yeah, like you, I am definitely more in favor of doing most work freehand. But there is no way, well, not no way. You could do this freehand or you can do this without a perspective grid, but I don't recommend it. So I'm just going to put a little bit of tone on the side of these books. And there's an object in the background that is supposed to, oddly enough, I'm drawing something in the background that's supposed to be in front of the books, but I'm going to go down to this assisted layer, bring my brush back down, and it just looks like it's like a jewelry box or something. But I'm going to come in here and just draw that in. And I've already realized I've broken my own rule by making it so dark. But, you know, it's not particularly important. All right, I'm going to just jump to throwing some texture on this and some light on this, and then we're going to call it a day. Or some texture and some color, I mean. There's plenty of light in here already. Now, things I will note, there is more detail to be had. For instance, the little coffee table that's sitting in between the two chairs, the small one here, I have not defined any of the real shadow planes here. There should be a shadow underneath the table. There should be a shadow on the side, the edge of the table that's facing away from the light. I haven't thrown any of that in there. The fireplace should definitely have just a little bit more shadow side. Oops, too dark. And again, like the bookcase, forms that are facing, that are parallel to the light source but turned away from it, planes that are parallel to the light source and turned away from it, should be dark. All right, so let me throw a texture layer on top. Let me pick a brush for it. So what's a big, gritty brush? And I will tell you the great thing about There's many great things about the class that I took, but one of the great things is that the instructor very much teaches you how to create your own custom brushes. And I've put that knowledge to use already in my personal work. I'll put it to use for stuff for my day job. I was doing some concept sketches for some products. All right, so let me just see if this will give me something that's kind of all right. I think that that'll work. So I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to give a little bit of just. I'm just going to faintly brush a little bit of grit, which is interesting because this is a kind of a shiny room. It doesn't seem like the kind of environment that would have grit on it. And what I'm kind of trying to do is use the grit, this grainy brush, to create a vignette, meaning kind of like when you have a drawing that fades to either light or dark, or it's cut in a circle or contained in a circle. Kind of using it more around the outer edges to darken areas outside of the focus. And I'm trying to do this gradually, but then add a little bit darker around the outer edges. That's too much right there. And I do feel like I need to pull back a little bit on this bottom right corner. I feel like it's a bit much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the exact same brush, and I'm going to make it large, and then I'm just going to come in here and see if I can just scrape away, almost as if you're just coming in with an X-Acto blade, and you're just scraping away some detail that you didn't want. Because it's the same brush, hopefully it will cut away, leaving the same kind of grain detail. And I actually see here that while it's good that I'm fixing that, I want to put a little bit more right on top of this, the table leg that's closest to us. Because that does feel like it's jumping out a little bit. Let's see here. King's Little Fitness says, I'd say lower the opacity on it, maybe by the shadow side of the window curtain. Well, there isn't really much grain on the curtain in there. What I'm really doing is just trying to frame out or block out areas that I don't want to jump out. And actually, now that you mention it, I kind of want to throw a little bit more texture over there. It's almost like I want the light to be the thing that's cutting through the texture. Now, with all of that said, I'm going to throw one more layer on top. Call this color. Put this on overlay. And we're going to start by filling it with an orange. And I'm going to try and make it not super saturated, but also not super bright. Kind of like a mid-tone, almost like a gray orange, which really just comes out as brown. But I'm going to move it slightly towards saturated, slightly lighter. So I'm going to start with a warm tone, and then I'm going to cool it off. I'm going to pick hot spots where I want it to be brighter, and then I'm going to cool off other areas. So I'm going to come in here with a gray, not a gray. I'm going to come in here with a blue. Or do I want to go purple? Yeah, it feels too Halloweenish. Now let's take this blue. This is definitely going to be grayer. Very cool, almost more gray than blue. And I think, well, now that I throw this overlay layer on there, I can see, let me name this texture. I like to name my layers because I forget what's on each layer. I originally got into the habit because, for work, I often have to share files with coworkers. And I know that I hate it when I'm searching through a file, excuse me, to try and find a certain object. But at a certain point, I realized, pardon me, at a certain point, I realized that honestly, naming layers is more for me, just in that it helps me figure out or recall. I'm not going to remember what I named all this stuff. So the question is, do I want to do the color with that same texture brush or not? And my instinct says, don't do it. It's going to be distracting, but I'm going to do it anyway. Let's see here. So what I want to do is just brush in these cool areas. I should probably go a lighter color because overlay works better with lighter colors versus darker colors. That's a little too saturated there. To undo that. Let's see here. Baron says, bless you. I said, thank you. I think I'm going to add a little bit of this cool color, not just in the shadows, but kind of creeping around the outer edge of the piece. And I kind of like how it's giving me this coppery feel by adding the cool blue in. The contrast between the two really feels like it's kind of like a steel rust feeling to it. I'm going to hit this back wall, not super hard, but This is a lot in shadow, so it definitely should have that cool feel. I'm gonna run it up the edge of the room here too. I'm gonna come here in the fireplace, and I feel like that's too saturated. I want to cut some of that out. Oh wait, not that's the problem. This room, I can't erase that out. I have to paint that orange tone back in, is what I have to do. Because this is an overlay layer. Now I can come back to, whoa, right. Now I see how big that brush is. Let's see here. King's Low Fitness says, as you mentioned overlay, I thought about Photoshop and how I should work more within Procreate with additional features I haven't used in a long time. So just been busy sketching in Medibang. Yeah, well, I mean, I think Medibang also has I think pretty much every drawing program, Photoshop, Procreate, the Studio Paint. Overlay is one of those basic digital drawing layer modes. So I think whether you're using Medibang or any other program, you can just throw an overlay layer on top. And this is what overlay is good for, is for coloring or tinting an existing drawing. It depends on what you're studying at the moment, because if you're really working on figures and volumes and structure, then the overlay stuff isn't really pertinent to those particular studies. Now, this is an interesting thing right here. If I bring this brush down small, because the pot, this flower pot, is on the foreground, I can create a sense of contrast, even though the values, I'm not tweaking the values at all, but by painting cool colors around the outside of this warm object. And again, this isn't something that I don't want to make the pot pop too much because it's not a focal point. But this is an interesting, too much there. That's the one thing is using with overlay, is that if you use a little bit too much pressure, it does tend to make your colors really saturate. But my point being is that by painting cool colors around this plant, I can make it pop a little bit. Not too much, because I don't want it to pop too much. But it's just that contrast is not just light and dark, it's also hues. So cooling down the spaces between. I mean, to be honest, if I really wanted to be lazy, I could just do a broad sweep over it and then come in and erase. And I think I'm going to do a little bit of that because I'm having trouble getting just the areas that I want. So it might be quicker to come in like this and just add some cool around it. And then come back in with the eraser, bring the eraser size down, and then just come in here and just, oh wait, again, I don't want to erase. I want to stick with brushes. And I want to switch back. I want to go from that big brush to a tiny brush and repaint in that color that I have. And just so you know where I'm going with this, when I get to the end here, I'm going to go around the window and around some of the brightest objects in the room. And I'm going to take a more saturated orange, but I'm also going to push the color closer from orange to yellow. So it's not going to be a full-on yellow, but it's going to be a more yellowy orange than I'm currently working with. And I'm going to use that to kind of highlight these brighter objects in the scene. But you know what? Just looking at this right here, let me make this bigger so that you guys can see. Just having the warm colors with this contrast of cool, I personally find very visually pleasing and soothing. I wasn't sure how this color combo was going to work out. I mean, again, when I think blues and oranges, I think of all the Harry Potter movie posters because that's kind of their ongoing theme. And I try not to. It's kind of stupid in a way. It's like I'm hamstringing myself because I think, oh, well, I know that that's a color scheme that works, and ergo, I don't. I try to avoid it because I feel like it's a cheat. But I'm like, it's not a cheat. It's a color scheme that works. So just use it. And in fact, I've thought I have a really beautiful book of Drew Struzan's paintings, his oeuvre book. And if you guys don't know who Drew Struzan is, look him up. Harry Potter movie posters, Star Wars movie posters, Raiders of the Lost Ark movie posters. That's all I need to say. And he's done way more than that. But I've often thought that it would be an interesting practice to take my own pieces and apply his color palette to it. So the only thing, I'm using my own composition, I'm drawing whatever I'm drawing, but then look at what his color palettes and say, all right, I'm going to copy that color palette. So anyway, as you can see now with the blue, I'm zoomed out. And it's probably a bit too small for you guys, so I'll come in a little bit more. But that blue around the warm color makes that pot really stand out more. Now I'm going to switch back to the cool color. And I'm going to bring my brush size back up, and I'm going to put some cools on the back of this bookcase. Let's see here. Kingslow Fitness says, I started going into color studies from Jack Ferragasso called The Student's Guide to Painting. So I'll post a screenshot in your Discord. Cool, I look forward to seeing it. You know, it's funny. Oh, that's one of the other things about this schoolism course. While I do work in color, it has never been my strong suit. And that was one of the things that I was looking forward to in taking the schoolism classes, was just expanding my sense of color, or just trying to push my knowledge and my ability and what I can do with color. So now I need to temper these cool colors now that I'm in this shadow area. And I mean, not that I'm in this shadow area, but now that I'm getting closer to the window, I feel like I have to be very judicious with how much of these cool colors I put in. But also, where I do put them in, they can be a little bit more saturated. That might be a bit much. The tough thing is finding that right balance, because it's real easy to just press hard and get a super bright color. So I'm trying to be patient and build up. Point being is that this close to the window, I really feel like there should be less of these cool colors. I probably shouldn't be putting in. I'm putting in tones where I would have painted these the shadows in this uh, table, but I probably shouldn't because I don't really want to draw attention to the fact that I didn't finish rendering them. But you know what? It is what it is. Okay, so all of that, maybe a little bit of cool on the underside of this lamp. See what happens if I go dark. I don't know if overlay really gives me much in terms of dark color. It's not like the multiply. I don't think it really darkens much so much as it grays things down. Let's see here. I see Flasheezy in the chat says, my God bless your trap, my brother. Thank you. I appreciate it, man. Nice to have some Twitch folk pop in. See, and the real challenge here is to not. In fact, let's see what happens if I push this to a really gray color, because I find when I'm going dark, and I'm on overlay, if I press too dark, it becomes too saturated. But I wonder, just by pushing the color to a really desaturated, like almost. In fact, let's see what happens if I paint with just gray on this layer. Okay, so gray still gives me a little bit of blue, which that is good to know, because now if I want to paint with really desaturated, I just know that I can neutralize that by making it the grayest version of that color. And that'll give me something that if I go dark, it's not going to be super saturated. And then I can save saturated colors for areas that are important. All right. So I'm going to go now to, let's say, a almost yellow orange, like a golden color. And we are now going to come in with this golden color, full saturation. This thing is going to like light up like Christmas. But I'm going to try and be really. As a matter of fact, I'm not even going to use the brush that I was using. I'm going to use the airbrush just because I really want to lightly brush this in. I don't want to blow the whole thing out. So I'm just going to use this around the edge of the light. You can see that I'm slowly creeping this into a golden color. Like this is the only real saturation I want in the entire piece. And I think it would be interesting to do the same thing with a predominantly cool palette, and then having like cool colors, but have them bloom in this way. So I'm kind of creating a halo of light around where the window is, a halo of golden colors. It's going to fall off as it casts its way through the room. And then I'm going to have that halo secondarily complemented on the flowers, as that's the object that's coming to the room and getting hit with the light. I got to be careful here because I'm going to also ruin all of that lighting that I mentioned with the cool light, the cool lighting that I threw around the outside of this plant. I'm going to blow a lot of that out by lighting up these flowers with this golden color. But I think it makes for a very compelling, attractive piece. Let's see here. So Fly Easy asks, what are you working on? So I am doing a study. There's the photo that's neck between the my head and the digital painting is the reference that I'm working from. But I'm doing an environment study based on a course. I don't know if you've heard of this thing called Schoolism, but it's an online school, art school, and I've been taking classes on there. And the instructor did a demo for a recent assignment, and then said at the end of the demo, go do your own piece. And I was about to start drawing a piece from imagination when I realized what made. Let me cut back some of this a little bit. What made the instructor's piece work so well was his understanding of light, of naturalistic light. So I thought, instead of drawing a room or an environment out of my imagination, maybe I should just go find a good photo and do a study of the light of that room. And that's what this is, my light study. So I'm just hitting a little bit of the underside of the lamp that's on the wall. And I'm not going to do this, but if I wanted to, I could totally say, all right, the lamp is, wait, that's too big. I could light this up as though the lamp were on and giving off light. That's a really hacky blow there where I kind of overdid it, but all right. So I'm pretty happy with this. I want to come back in with those cool colors. And I'm going to just try and a little bit of the areas that I blew out. I'm going to come back in here with cool just around some of these edges. Bring that back in. Just for that contrast that I mentioned, I don't want to lose that completely. Let me also, I think just because it will give this piece some nice contrast, I'm going to come in here and go a little bit of overkill around the edges and really cool off like the outer edges of the piece. So let's see here. Kingslow Fitness says, I Googled cool colors and the first color was what you're using, like an orange. And there's yellow, yellowish or lighter orange. Yeah, you know what? There's a really great video. I don't know if you've looked at Marco Bucci on YouTube, but he's got a bunch, like I'd say in terms of artists who have broken down how color works, his videos I think are some of the best. And they're pretty entertaining too. Marco Bucci, Mark Brunetti, Cynics, all those guys have really great videos on how color works. But really, I mean, you can just split the color wheel in half. And it's sort of like, Yellow, orange, and red are the warm colors. Um, Green is kind of a bubble, and then blue and but green, blue, and purple are considered the cool colors. But you can have, I mean, to be honest, you can take any color. You can make a cool blue and a warm blue. You can do a cool red and a warm red. But generally, if you go around the color wheel in terms of like the six main colors, the six primary and secondary colors, it's like green, blue, and purple are cool. Red, yellow, and orange are warm. You can use warm and cool colors in any combination like that for a variety of different effects. So this is something that, yeah, it's not like the most stellar piece of concept art. I don't have all these other little details. You know what? I see one little detail that I think could make this piece pop. I'm going to do one more layer on top. I'm going to make this layer overlay as well. And we went long on this one, but I think it was worth it because I was close enough to the end that I thought, let me just push through. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of pink to the flowers, which is funny because in the photo reference, the flowers are white, but I want to see what happens if I throw some pink on here. Get this into a magenta. Let's see what happens if I just come in here and well, interestingly, I think overlay does not seem to, for something that's white, it doesn't seem to do much. So I may have to try, you know what? Let's see what happens if first off, let's turn this to normal. So I'm just going to see if I can find a color mode that tints this the way I want to, where you can see all the stuff underneath. I mean, otherwise it might be fine to just come in and on normal, just paint in little details. But I want to see if I can get this to just color what's underneath it, which probably instinct tells me maybe I should try color mode. Which is probably what I will try first. But if I zoom out real quick, I just want to see if this gives me, like that looks ugly. That does not give me what I want. Let's just do what I usually do, which is just go through color modes until I find something that does what I want it to do. Actually, color mode looks pretty good. Saturation doesn't, I lose what I wanted. Hue or color mode, both seem they're pretty good. Let's go with, let's see. Let me just flip through a couple of other and see if there's anything else that pops. Hard mix, pin light, linear light, vivid light, hard light, soft light, lighter color, add, color dodge, lighten, normal, darken, linear burn, color burn, darken, and multiply. Yeah, I think color seems to be the best for what I'm looking for here. So I'm just going to come in here and even though the flowers are completely white in the reference, I like this idea of coming in here and giving them almost like a kind of a cherry blossom feel. And this being like the one little area of color that, I mean, yeah, there's color throughout the entire piece, But this one, I feel like adding that extra tinge really makes the room pop. So let me get rid of the reference there. So now you can see the whole finished piece. Oh, and thank you for correcting me, Fly Z. I'll refer to you as Fly Z now. As Kingslow Fitness can tell you, I have a bad habit of butchering people's names if I can't quite make out what their screen names are. But Fly Z, thank you for joining me for this session. Hopefully you'll catch the future ones. I live stream every Sunday, 11 p.m. 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Sunday. But yeah, everybody, so this is it. Color study based on photo reference. And it was a good exercise for me. I feel like I learned a lot. I feel like I reinforced what I learned from that class I've been taking. Here, I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see kind of that final effect with the pot, with a little bit of slight cool. I've destroyed a lot of that cool contrast when I went in with the brighter yellow. There's still a little bit of the blue cool framing it. But now it's almost like the plant and the vase are kind of glowing. To be honest, looking at it, I feel like I should also add a little bit of green to that color layer. I don't want to have it be a super saturated green. I want it to be like a forest green, but let's see what happens if I come in here with a little bit of this. Because I just figure if I'm going through all of that work to bring in that little bit of color in this piece, I should probably do that with all of these leaves. And I think I'm learning the trick is if I'm going to do something on a color or an overlay layer, just pick really dull, desaturated versions of those colors, because these overlay layers, that's what they do, is they blow out the colors, which if you want blown out colors, it's fine. But I always feel like you got to pick and choose where you want your colors blown out. You don't want them blown out all the time. A little bit of green. There we go. Yeah. So with the rest of it all being kind of monochromatic, well, you know, just the orange and blue, but then having a little bit of color in here to make this pop. Yeah, I think that works. That works. If I were going to go further, I would actually probably go in, look at my reference, and I would fully render the pot. So it's like that's the only thing that actually has detail to it. And everything else, I think that when you have something like that where it draws attention to itself, it makes the fact that like these chairs are actually fairly unfinished. And you know that thing I mentioned about the table, now it's like you don't even notice that table that I didn't put in the shadows at all. Like when you have something that draws the eye, it's like all those other things you're like, oh, I didn't even notice that. So yeah, I am pretty happy with this experiment. Let's see here. Fly Z says, thanks for streaming. Thank you, for watching. Thanks for checking it out. I appreciate it. Said, you did so good. I appreciate the kind words. I am but a humble student like the rest of y'all. Kingslow Fitness says, as you learn, you teach. Awesome. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Let's close things out the way that we usually do. So if you want to join our art book study group, which is happening this Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you miss it, you can always catch the replay. But all you got to do is become a Patreon subscriber. You get the art book study group. We do that twice a month, and they are longer live streams, 2.5, 3 hours long, where we dig into some of the best art books around. You also are able to access digital versions of my comics. You can read them all online. You get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share artwork give feedback, talk about tips, tools, movies, films, analyze stuff, just chop it up. All that more for as little as $2 a month. There are higher tiers for higher rewards, but $2 a month is the basic tier. Head on over to patreon.com/GERIMI. There's links in the description. If you're on Twitch, there's links from the homepage of the channel. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. You also get work in progress animated gifts delivered right to your inbox. You get blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, all that and more for free, newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you want to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle or Comixology, you can pick those up at amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It's a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. It's a done-in-one story, self-contained, beginning, middle, and end. You can also pick up my most recent comic book, Morning Star. It tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven, but as a Western. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8. It's the conclusion to the story. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character sketches, thumbnails, page layouts, script excerpts, photo reference. They basically show you how I put the whole book together. All that and more at amazon.jeremy.net. For those books on the YouTube homepage, there's also book flip through. So you can actually see videos of me flipping through the books and showing you the insides. You can check all that out, amazon.jeremy.net. I know this was a long one today, but I appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoyed. See Byron in there. He says thanks for the stream. As always, thank you guys for showing up, for the interesting conversation and feedback and comments. You guys make this fun. You guys make it worthwhile. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a subscriber. If you know anyone who you think would enjoy these videos, please share them. Hit the like button, hit the share button, forward it to a friend that you think is also into art or enjoys creative process. That's it for now. Go be creative.